In our gospel it says, since the bridegroom was long delayed, they all became drowsy and fell asleep. I think that's a pretty accurate description of where our society is today. It's been 2,000 years since Jesus walked on the face of the earth. And, throughout the years, many people have been anticipating his coming. But as we look at our society today, how many people are doing that today? How many people really believe that Jesus Christ is going to return in glory and are going to sleep thinking Christ is going to return? And when they wake up, that's what they're thinking about. It's probably a pretty small number of people. For the most part, people seem to be living pretty firmly in this world. And we can see that in different ways. If people really expected that Jesus Christ was going to return in glory, our churches would be packed. When we offered confession, the confession lines would be down the block if people really believed that Christ were returning. They would want to prepare themselves in that way. We can see it in the vote this past Tuesday. In Ohio, over 2 million people voted to guarantee the right to abortion in the Ohio Constitution. How many people would have voted that way if they were expecting Christ's imminent return in glory? If that's what they were thinking about, they probably would have voted a different way. Imagine if it were today that the heavens opened up and there were a cry that reverberated from every corner of the earth, "Behold the bridegroom, come out to meet him." And from every corner of the world, every single person would hear it. How much would change in that instant? One thing that would change is at that moment, every single person on the face of the earth would instantly know that Jesus Christ is Lord. There would be no doubt about different religions. Everybody would know Jesus Christ is Lord, and this is the end. The only thing that would really matter about our lives at that point would be how our lives are judged in his eyes. Have we lived in a way that's pleasing to him or not? That's really the only thing that would matter in terms of our lives. So many things that we spend a lot of time focused on would probably be meaningless at that moment. There's a lot of things that are valid responsibilities. We have to go to work. We have to take care of our homes, take care of our cars. But we would never need to do any of those things again. Those things would have passed. Every moment that we had spent in the presence of the Eucharist, every time we had gone to the sacrament of confession, every time we had genuflected with love and devotion to our Lord, every Hail Mary that we had offered in our lives, and every time we responded to what God's grace was prompting us to do or helped someone who was in need, every one of those moments would bring us joy and delight at that time. There's other things that we could probably think of where we'd say, well, I shouldn't have done that. I just wasted my time on that. And there'd be distractions or things that we regret doing. How much effort do we spend concerned about what other people think? Or how much time do we spend accumulating wealth or possessions that are beyond what we reasonably need? All of those things we would consider wasted time, where we could have been doing something more productive. And probably at that moment, there would be a lot of people that would wish for one more day. If they just had one more day to go to confession, to come to Mass, to make donations to those in need. If they just had one day to get their life in order, how valuable that would be. But at the end, we won't have that opportunity. We have that opportunity now, but we will not at the end. And so as we reflect upon this, one of the things we can draw our attention to is that the Christian life is a life of preparation. We are constantly in a state of preparing ourselves, first to look forward with love and with hope to the coming of Christ. This is not something that we dread. We want Jesus Christ to return in glory, and if we love him, we want it all the more. But it should also be a time where we prepare ourselves to make sure that when Christ does return, our lives are pleasing to him and that we can stand before him with a pure conscience. Athletes all have training plans. They might have like a personal trainer, or they have a coach who's watches over each one of the athletes and has a recognition of strengths and weaknesses and crafts their training in order to improve the abilities of the individual athletes. We should be doing the same thing with our spiritual lives. It's very helpful to take a step back from time to time and look at our spiritual lives and to honestly ask ourselves the question, what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses in our spiritual lives? It's important for us to know those, and especially to know what our primary weakness is. All of us, to some degree or another, struggle with different vices, but most of us have a primary vice that we struggle with. And that vice might be laziness. It might be that we're pretty apathetic to a life of prayer. Or it could be envy. We could be angry at others because of what they have. Like, why did this person get a promotion when I didn't at work? Or, whatever it might be. For some people, it might be pride. They might always be concerned about themselves and making sure that they get what's comfortable or what they want in the moment, or they never want to be wrong. Each of us struggles with some vice. And it's important for us to know what that is. And if we don't know, pray to your guardian angel to reveal it to you, because I'm sure your guardian angel knows, because he's probably dealing with it every day. So we can gain insight through asking our guardian angel to intercede for us. But once we know what that weakness is, every vice has an opposing virtue. And that's the virtue that we need to focus on building. And so if our vice is envy, then the opposing virtue is brotherly love. Why do we not love this other person enough that we're happy at the good things that they have instead of being upset about it? And so our goal should be to build that virtue. And so maybe we say 3 times a day, I'm going to pray for this person. And I'm going to offer prayers of gratitude for the good things that they have, so that over time it'll change our hearts. And instead of being envious of this person, we now are grateful for what they have. And so it's good for us to know what our primary vice is, figure out what the opposing virtue is, and then develop a plan to build that. A second thing that we can do in terms of having a plan is to look at our prayer life. Is our prayer life deep enough that it actually intensifies our hope and our love for the Lord over time? Sometimes people do pray, but it's kind of at a superficial level. They might just recite memorized prayers, but over time, they're not deepening and intensifying their hope. And so if our prayer life isn't that deep, that means that we need to make a renewed effort to deepen our prayer life. And that requires a lot of patience. A lot of times people give up on prayer before they get to that point. That's probably what happens most of the time. And it also requires purification, because sometimes we might find that every time we're in prayer, we're just thinking about our car, or some friction within some relationship within our family, or there might be some sort of distraction where we're not really focusing on God in our prayer, but we're focusing on something else. And so we may need to be purified of that before we can enter into that deeper life of prayer. And so as we reflect upon our readings today, we don't know how much time that we have left. We have no idea. But we do know that the day will come when the bridegroom will return. And so our lives should be a time of preparation. And so I encourage us to look at our spiritual lives and develop a game plan. What is our primary vice? And what virtue do we need to focus on? What's the opposing virtue? And also to look at our prayer life, to make sure it's deep enough that it's truly intensifying our hope and our love for the Lord.